Hi friends, welcome to our channel. நம்ம சேனலில் இன்றைக்கி நம்ம பார்க்க போகிறது இந்தியன் பாலிட்டி லக்ஷ்மிகாந்த் புக் பார்த்துட்ருக்கோம். அதில் இன்றைக்கி நம்ம பார்க்க போகிறது வந்துட்டு அட்மினிஸ்ட்ரேட்டிவ் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் அப்படின்றது. ஓகேங்களா, சென்டர் ஸ்டேட் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் அப்படின்ற டாப்பிக்கில் இது வருது. அட்மினிஸ்ட்ரேட்டிவ் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் இதுக்கு முன்னாடி ஒரு பாட்டு பார்த்தாச்சு. லெஜிஸ்லேட்டிவ் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் அது பார்த்துட்டு இந்த வீடியோ பாருங்கள். ஓகேங்களா, ஓகே வாங்க பார்க்கலாம். ரீடிங் தான் இருக்கும். உங்களுக்கு இதுக்கு எக்ஸ்ப்ளனேஷன் வேணும் அப்படின்னா கீழே கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்கள். எக்ஸ்ப்ளனேஷன் வீடியோவும் சேர்த்து இனிமேல் கொடுக்குறேன். ஓகே, அட்மினிஸ்ட்ரேட்டிவ் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் ஆர்டிகல்ஸ் 256 to 263 in part 11 of the constitution deals with the administrative relations between the center and the states. In addition, there are various other articles pertaining to the same matter. Next, distribution of executive powers. Distribution of executive powers. The executive power has been divided between the center and the states on the lines of the distribution of legislative powers, except in few cases. Thus, the executive power of the center extends to the whole of India to the to the matters on which the parliament has exclusive power of legislation, that is the subjects enumerated in the union list, and to the exercise of rights, authority and jurisdiction conferred on it by any treaty or agreement. Similarly, the executive power of a state extends to its territory in respect of matters on which the state legislature has executive power of legislation, that is the subjects enumerated in the state list. In respect of matters on which both the parliament and the state legislators have power of legislation, that is the subjects enumerated in the concurrent list, the executive power rests with the states except when a constitutional provision or a parliamentary law specifically confers it on the center. Therefore, a law on a concurrent subject, though enacted by the parliament, is to be executed by the states, except when the constitution or the parliament has directed otherwise. Next, obligation of states and center. The constitution has placed two restrictions on the executive power of the states in order to give ample scope to the center for exercising its executive power in an unrestricted manner. Thus, the executive power of every state is to be exercised in such a way as to ensure compliance with the laws made by the parliament and by existing law which apply in the state. And B, next, as not to impede or prejudice the exercise of executive power of the center in the state. While the former lays down a general obligation upon the state, the latter imposes a specific obligation on the state not to hamper the executive power of the center. In both the cases, the executive power of the center extends to giving of such directions to the state as are necessary for the purpose. The sanction behind these directions of the center is coercive in nature. This Article 365 says that where any state has failed to comply with or to give effect to any directions given by the center, it will be lawful for the president to hold that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried on or in accordance with the provisions of constitution. It means that in such a situation, the president's rule can be imposed in the state under Article 356. Next, center's direction to the states. In addition to the above two cases, the center is empowered to give directions to the states with regard to the exercise of their executive power in the following matters. First, the construction and maintenance of means of communication declared to be of national or military importance by the state. The measures to be taken for the protection of the railways within the state. The provision of adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority groups in the state, and the drawing up and execution of the specified schemes for the welfare of the scheduled tribes in the state. The coercive sanction behind the central directions under Article 365 mentioned above is also applicable in these cases. Next, mutual delegation of functions. The distribution of legislative powers between the center and the states is rigid. Consequently, the center cannot delegate its legislative powers to the states, and a single state cannot request the parliament to make a law on a state subject. The distribution of executive power in general follows the distribution of legislative powers. but such a rigid division in executive sphere may lead to occasional conflicts between the two. Hence, the Constitution provides for intergovernment delegation of executive functions in order to mitigate rigidity and avoid a situation of deadlock. Accordingly, the President may, with the consent of the state government, entrust to that government any of the executive functions of the center. Conversely, the governor of a state may, with the consent of the central government, entrust to that government any of the executive functions of the state. This mutual delegation of administrative functions may be conditional or unconditional. The Constitution also makes a provision for the entrustment of the executive functions of the center or to a state without the consent of that state. But in this case, the delegation is by the parliament or not by the president. Thus, a law made by the parliament on a subject of the union list can confer powers and impose duties on a state, or authorize the conferring of powers and imposition of duties by the center upon a state, irrespective of the consent of the state concerned. Notably, the same thing cannot be done by the state legislature. From the above, it is clear that the mutual delegations of functions between the center and the state can take place either under an agreement or by a legislation. While the center can use both the methods, here state can use only the first method. Next, cooperation between the center and the states. The Constitution contains the following provisions to secure cooperation and coordination between the center and the states. First point, the Parliament can provide for the adjudication of any dispute or complaint with respect to the use, distribution, and control of waters of any interstate river and river valley. The President can establish under Article 263 an interstate council to investigate and discuss subject of common interest between the center and the states. Such a council was set up in 1990. Next point, full faith and credit is to be given throughout the territory of India to public acts, records and judicial proceedings of the center and every state. The Parliament can appoint an appropriate authority to carry out the purposes of the constitutional provisions relating to the interstate freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse, but no such authority has been appointed so far. Next, all India services. Like in any other federation, the center and the states also have the separate public services called as the center services and state services respectively. In addition, there are all India services, IAS, IPS and IFS. The members of these services occupy top positions under both the center and the states and serve them by turns, but they are recruited and trained by the center. These services are controlled jointly by the center and the states. The ultimate control lies with the central government. While the immediate control lies with the state government. In 1947, the Indian Civil Service was replaced by IAS and the Indian Police Service IP was replaced by IPS and were recognized by the Constitution as All India Services. In 1966, the Indian Forest Service IFS was created as the third All India Service. Article 312 of the Constitution authorizes the Parliament to create new All India Services on the basis of Rajya Sabha resolution to that effect. Next, each of these three All India services, irrespective of their division among different states, form a single service with common rights and status and uniform scales of pay throughout the country. Though the All India services violate the principle of federation under the Constitution by restricting the autonomy on patronage of the states, they are supported on the ground that they help in maintaining high standard of administration in the center as well as in the states. They help to ensure uniformity of the administrative system throughout the country, and they facilitate liaison, cooperation, coordination and joint action on the issues of common interest between the center and the states. While justifying the institution of all India services in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar observed that the dual policy, which is inherent in a federal system, is followed in all federations by a dual service. In all federations, there is a federal service, civil service and a state civil service. The Indian Federation, though a dual polity, will have a dual service with one exception. It is recognized that in every country there are certain posts in its administrative setup which might be called strategic from the point of view of maintaining the standard of administration. There can be no doubt that the standard of administration depends upon the caliber of the civil servants who are appointed to the strategic post. The constitution provides that without depriving the states of their rights to form their own civil services, there shall be an all India service recruited on all India basis with common qualifications, with uniform scale of pay, and members of which alone could be appointed to those strategic posts throughout the union. Next, public service commissions. In the field of public service commissions, the central state relations are as follows. The chairman and members of a state public service commission, though appointed by the governor of the state, can be removed only by the president. Appointed by the governor of state can be removed only by the president. The parliament can establish a joint state public service commission, JSPSC, for two or more states on the request of the state legislatures concerned. The chairman and members of the JSPSC are appointed by the president. The Union Public Service Commission UPSC can serve the needs of a state on the request of the state government with the approval of the president. The UPSC assists the states when requested by two or more states. UPSC assists the states when requested by two or more states in framing and operating schemes of joint recruitment for any services for which candidates possessing special qualifications are required. Next, integrated judicial system. Integrated judicial system. Though India has a dual polity, there is no dual system of administration of justice. The constitution, on the other hand, established an integrated judicial system with the Supreme Court at the top and the state high court below it. This single system of courts enforces both the central laws as well as the state laws. This is done to eliminate diversities in the remedial procedure. The judges of a state high court are appointed by the president in consultation with the chief justice of India and governor of the state. They can also be transferred and removed by the president. The parliament can establish a common high court for two or more states. A common high court for two or more states. A parliament can establish. For example, Maharashtra and Goa or Punjab and Haryana have common high court. Next, relations during emergencies. During the operation of a national emergency under Article 352, the center becomes entitled to give executive directions to a state or any matter. Thus, the state governments are brought under the complete control of the center, though they are not suspended. When the president's rule is imposed in a state under Article 356, the president can assume to himself the functions of the state government and powers vested in the governor or any other executive authority in the state. During the operation of a financial emergency under Article 360, the center can direct the state to observe canons of financial propriety, and the president can give other necessary directions, including the reduction of salaries of persons serving in the state and the high court judges. Next, other provisions. The constitution contains the following other provisions which enable the center to exercise control over the state administration. First one, Article 355 imposes two duties on the center. First one, to protect every state against external aggregation and internal disturbance, and to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. The governor of a state is appointed by the president. He holds office. Governor is appointed by president. He holds office during the pleasure of the president. In addition to the constitutional head of the state, the governor acts as an agent of the center and state. Governor is an agent of the center and state. Center in the state. Governor வந்து சென்டரோட ஏஜென்ட் ஸ்டேட்டில். He submits periodical reports to the center about the administrative affairs of the state. The state election commissioner, though appointed by the governor, can be removed by the president. Election commissioner வந்துட்டு state election commissioner appointed by the governor but removed only by the president. Next, extra constitutional devices. In addition to the above mentioned constitutional devices, there are extra constitutional devices to promote cooperation and coordination between the center and the states. These include a number of advisory bodies and conferences held at the central level. The non-constitutional advisory bodies include the Planning Commission, now Niti Aayog, the National Development Council, the Integrational Council, the Central Council of Health, the Central Council of Local Government and Urban Development, the Zonal Councils, the Northeastern Council, the Central Council of Indian Medicine, the Central Council of Homeopathy, and the Central Family Welfare Council, the Transport Development Council, University Grants Commission, and so on. The important conferences held either annually or otherwise to facilitate center-state consultation on a wide range of matters are as follows. The governance conference presided over by the presided over by the president. Next, the chief ministers conference presided over by the prime minister. Chief secretariat conference presided over by the cabinet secretary. The conference of inspector general of police. The chief justices conference presided over by the chief justice of India. The Chief Justices Conference presided over by the Chief Justice of India. The Conference of Vice Chancellors, the Home Ministers Conference presided over by the Central Home Minister. The Law Ministers Conference presided over by the Central Law Minister. இதுதான் இதோட வந்து அட்மினிஸ்ட்ரேட்டிவ் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் பார்ட் வந்துட்டு உங்களுக்கு முடிஞ்சது தான். நெக்ஸ்ட் வந்துட்டு ஃபினான்ஷியல் ரிலேஷன்ஸ் நெக்ஸ்ட் இருக்குது. அது வந்து நெக்ஸ்ட் வீடியோவில் பார்க்கலாம். ஓகே, பாய்.